Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sade, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you and all your listeners and to be a part of the second annual Abundant Joy Conference. It just, I get so excited to be able to do this with you and to just, spread the love of God for people and in the earth and just help them to experience a life of freedom. And tonight I want to talk about how we can experience freedom from hurt feelings. One of the most important things to us being able to enjoy our lives and to experience freedom in our relationships is the way that we deal with our hurt feelings. And it's not so much about getting to the place where you never have any hurt feelings or getting to the place of never having hurt feelings. But I think for so many of us, our hurt feelings have shaped our lives. And so I think what we want is um, just to understand that we're going to have hurt feelings sometimes, but we don't want those hurt feelings to shape our lives. I mean, it's bad enough to have our feelings hurt, but we don't want our lives or we don't want to live our lives in bondage to our hurt feelings. We don't want our lives to be shaped by our hurt feelings. We don't want to be out there every day having our hurt feelings dictating the things we say, the things we do. I mean, we don't want to be out there and we don't want to have our hurt feelings. We don't want to be in the place where our hurt feelings shape our relationships and our everyday lives. What we want is we want to be able to enjoy a life of freedom from our hurt feelings, so that like when our hurt feelings come, they then go. That they come and then they pass. We don't want a life where our hurt feelings like camp out and then we like pitch a tent and camp out with our hurt feelings and just live there. Um, through the course of, and I'm sure everybody's figured this out by now. At least most of your listeners have probably already figured this out by now. Is that through the course of walking in this world, we're going to experience some injustices that can cause us to have hurt feelings. But we don't want, what we don't want is for the injustices we experience to cause us to stumble at the truth about ourselves, about our lives. We don't want the injustices we experience to cause us to stumble at the truth about the people that have hurt us, or even stumble at the truth about God. We don't want our lives in this world to be shaped by the injustices we encounter or the hurt feelings that can come from the injustices we encounter. Because what will happen is if our lives become shaped by the injustices we encounter, it will send us off into a life of self-justification, a life where we're always striving to justify ourselves, a life where we are always striving to prove our value and worth, where we're always striving to prove to others and to the world that we have value and worth. And then what happens is our hearts are filled with bitterness towards the world and towards our lives and towards all the people around us. You know, everyone's been created with an inner voice telling them they are full of value and worth. Everybody has a silent voice that echoes in the depths of their hearts, and that echo is telling them that they are full of beauty and glory. That echo is telling them that they're full of value and worth. That echo is telling them that they've been created for greatness. You know, and we all have a deep-seated desire to be treated in a way that is consistent with that voice, that is consistent with that voice that is echoing in our hearts. And what happens is, as our feelings get hurt, whenever we feel we are not being treated in a way that is consistent with our inherent value and worth. We can see the way people treat us sometimes and the way things are going for us in the world sometimes. And we can just find ourselves in the place where we can think, man, what is going on? The things that are happening, the things that people are saying and doing to me, the things that are going on around me, this doesn't match up with what I feel in my heart about what should be going down. This doesn't match up with the voice that's echoing in my heart. What is going on? You know, the temptation when our feelings get hurt is to make a bunch of judgments and conclusions about the situation we're experiencing and the people who are involved. And the temptation is to make judgments and conclusions about that situation from the perspective of our hurt feelings instead of from the perspective of the truth. And so what happens many times is that when our feelings are getting hurt, we're off in our minds figuring about what it means and what's going on there. And what happens is the judgments and the conclusions we come to are born from our hurt feelings instead of being born from the truth. I mean, we come to our own conclusions about what went down there, and then we run down the road with them. You know, even if we aren't aware of it when it's happening, even if we don't know that it's going down, when it's going down, we make judgments and we come to conclusions about everything that happens to us and what those things mean about us, what they mean about the people involved, what they mean about the world around us, and what they mean about God. I mean, we assign significance and value to every situation we encounter. And what happens is those judgments are planted in our hearts, and then we begin to live out of those judgments. Those judgments and conclusions that we make become the driving force behind the life we experience. They become the driving force behind our thoughts. They become the driving force behind the way we see things and the way we handle things, instead of the driving force behind our lives being the judgment God has given about our lives in Jesus and the passion in our hearts. I mean, listen, man, we don't want the driving force behind our lives to be the hurt we felt in this world. We don't want the driving force behind our lives to be the injustices we've experienced in this world. We don't want our hurt feelings to become the father of our lives. We don't want our hurt feelings to become the father or to give birth to the way we see things in this world. I mean, we want the driving force behind our lives to be the judgment God has given about our lives and the judgment God has given about all people, so that the passion that's in our heart, the passion that we have in our hearts through our union with God is free to come forth, man. We want passion to be the driving force of our lives, not hurt feelings, if you can understand what I'm saying there. Now listen, as we go through life, the people we interact with and the people we have relationships with are going to do and say things that can be hurtful to us and cause us pain. It's just going to happen. I mean, that's just the way that it is right now. And a lot of times the people who we are the closest to, or who are supposed to love us the most, or who we feel the most connected to, a lot of times those are the ones that are going to say and do things that can be the most hurtful to us and that can cause us the most pain. And it's not our judgment that we feel hurt in those situations that causes us a problem. What causes us a problem in those situations is that we then judge the motive, or we tend to judge the motive in the heart of those we are hurt by. We tend to judge the thoughts and intents and the motive in the people's hearts that we feel hurt by. And that's really the thing that causes us the problem. That's when we get into like the danger zone where we're on a slippery slope of our hurt feelings now becoming the father of our life. And see, what happens is without us even realizing we're doing it many times, we tend to judge the thoughts and intents of a person's heart based on what we feel as a result of what they have said and done. I mean, we basically look at what we feel based on what they've said and done, and then we judge what's in their hearts based on how we feel. I mean, we take our feelings and then we look at them and we judge what's going on in their hearts by our feelings. And if something a person says or does causes us to feel hurt, we conclude that their thoughts of us are not good. And because their thoughts of us are not good, this is how they have reacted to us. If we feel hurt as a result of what someone has said or done to us, we conclude that they must be dissatisfied with us, they must find some fault in us, they must not be around us, or that they find us to be lacking in some way. We conclude that they don't see value in us. We conclude that they don't care about us, that they don't love us, that they aren't for us. We think we come to the conclusion in our hearts that they must have a negative view of us. And because of those things, the intent in their heart is to be against us. Those are all the conclusions we come to when we feel hurt. We look at it as if their behavior towards us has something to do with us and what they see in us. So if we see that they've said and done hurtful things towards us, we judge the thoughts and intents of their hearts as being negative towards us. We judge the thoughts and intents of their hearts as if they find no value in us. We judge the thoughts and intents of their hearts as if they don't esteem us, and that they don't think there's anything of beauty to behold in us. Listen, guys, when we judge the thoughts and intents of a person's heart according to their negative behavior towards us, our lives are going to be shaped by our hurt feelings. That's what's going to happen there. If we then going to come and judge the thoughts and intents of a person's heart according to their negative behavior towards us and according to the hurt feelings we feel at the hands of their negative behavior, what's going to happen then, man, is our lives are going to be shaped by our hurt feelings and the injustices that we've experienced. Whatever picture we paint of the people and the situations we encounter will then give shape and definition to what we experience in our lives and also in our relationships. It will give shape to the way we see things, and it will give shape to the way we handle things that we encounter in this world. And we can just look at this example to try to get a understanding of this. But let's say I'm driving down the road and I come upon a red light. And let's say there's another car in front of me at the red light. Now, when the light turns green, the car in front of me doesn't go. And because they don't go, I'm stuck at the red light all over again. Listen, man, I don't know if any of you guys, maybe it's just me, but what I've had that happen a few times, and when it happens, man, it doesn't feel good. If you can feel frustrated, if you know what I mean. But let's say that because that they don't go, I'm now stuck at the red light all over again. And maybe I've got somewhere to be, and so I feel pain at being stuck at the red light. Maybe I'm going to be late for work now, and maybe I've been late before, and I could get written up now. Or maybe I might even get fired because I've been late before. And because I feel pain, because I feel the pain at being stuck at that red light and what could happen to me, I begin to say to myself, man, they're a bad driver. If they would just pay attention, I could have gone. They are not considerate of anyone but themselves. They must be on their phone. They don't care about anybody but themselves. Look at what they've caused me. Now I'm going to be fired because of them. Now I'm going to be late because of them. You see, all these judgments I'm making are about the thoughts and intents of the heart of the driver in front of me. I'm not just looking at their actions, but I've looked at what's happened there, and I'm using what's happened there in my hurt feelings or the hurt that's been caused to me, and I'm now judging the thoughts and the intents of that person's heart. And all those judgments that I'm making are causing me to see that person in a certain way. And the way I'm seeing them is causing me to be angry and bitter with them. It's causing me to be frustrated with them. It's filling me, man, maybe even to some degrees, I'm even feeling like, man, I hate them. Look at what's going to happen to me because of them. But now let's flip the script a little bit now so we can see two sides of this. But now let's say that I can see into the person's heart in front of me. They did the same thing. They didn't go when the light was green. The light turned red. I was stuck at the red light. I'm still going to be late for work. All those same hurtful things are going to happen to me. But let's say I can see into their heart. And instead of coming to all those conclusions, I see into their heart, and I see the person in front of me has just lost their husband of 30 years, and they are returning from the hospital where their husband just died. And the reason they didn't notice that the light was turning red is because they were stricken with grief in their hearts. And their thoughts were thinking of their loss. And they were daydreaming because they felt great despair. They're trying to figure out, how are they going to survive in the world without their husband? How are they going to get by without their husband there with them? How are they going to enjoy life without the one that they've loved their whole life? You see, if this is what is in my heart about them, even if I experience something negative, if that's what I think about what's going on in their heart, if I see that their heart wasn't to do me harm, that they didn't intend to do something bad to me, but that something else was going on in their heart, do you see what'll happen is it'll set me free from the pain I experienced at being stuck at the red light. Instead of feeling angry and bitter and lashing out at the woman, my heart will be filled with love and compassion for her. You see, the action of the lady was the same in both instances. But with the first set of judgments, my life was shaped by my hurt feelings, and I was filled with bitterness and anger. But with the second set of judgments, my life was shaped by the truth of what was really going on there. And I experienced freedom from the hurt feelings. And I was filled with love and compassion for the woman at the red light. And I was able to care more about her hurt than I was to care about my own hurt. You know, I'll use a different example, maybe even just something that I lived through also. But when my wife and I first got together, you know, two people come together they have different backgrounds, different lives, and you got to iron out things and get to know each other. And through the course of that, man, we had some headbutting and misunderstandings that happened between us. We had some, I don't know if you guys seen the movie, the War of the Roses, with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner, but we had some real War of the Roses moments in our relationship. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that bad. I mean, I don't know if anything can get that bad when you fall from the ceiling. I'm just exaggerating. It wasn't anything near like that. But there were times where we were misunderstanding each other and we were at odds with one another. Now, through the course of that, I found myself judging the thoughts and intents of my wife's heart sometimes. I found myself making unrighteous judgments about her and the things she said and did. And what I did was I began making conclusions that she was against me, that she was out to get me, that she had no respect for me or the things I did for her. And in reality, that's not what was happening at all. That wasn't what was going on inside of her heart at all. You see, I was taking my hurt feelings and then I was using my hurt feelings to judge her heart. And I came up with all these crazy conclusions. What happened is I made these judgments about my wife and the thoughts and intents of her heart, and then the image I had of her in my heart became marred by my judgments. You know, like the picture I had of her in my heart became beaten and bloodied, kind of like Rocky, the movie Rocky, with Rocky and Apollo Creed, where Apollo Creed gives Rocky a real big whooping and his face gets beat up. You see, the more I made these wrong conclusions about my wife's heart because of my hurt feelings, see, she was getting beaten up in my heart, and the picture, the image that I had of her in my heart became marred to the degree that her image was like disfigured, and I no longer even saw her or could see her according to the truth. I could no longer see her according to the truth about who she was and what her heart really was for me. And you know, that shaped the way I saw my wife. It shaped the way I treated her. It shaped the way I was with her. I began relating to her as if she was this woman that was against me, as if she was this woman that wasn't for me and that was instead always out to get me. You know, guys, our lives become shaped by our hurt feelings when we judge the thoughts and intents of a person's heart behind their actions. We have problems in our relationships because we judge the thoughts and intents of people's hearts by the hurt and the pain that we've felt from them. We have problems in our relationships because we let our hurt feelings tell us what's going on in people's hearts and the people's hearts that have hurt us. I mean, I don't know if you guys know who Confucius is, but Confucius is like, supposed to be the wisest guy ever, and Confucius say, whatever he says must be the truth. And I think sometimes in those situations where our feelings get hurt, we act as if we're Confucius, and Confucius say. I mean, we think we know what is in the heart of a person when they say and do things to us. We function as if they're a perfectly free person with no bondages in their own hearts, with no pain and suffering in their own hearts, and from their absolute position of freedom, they've now done these things to us. It's like we think they are happy about having caused us pain, or as if they say to themselves, man, mission accomplished, as if they pat themselves on the back and say, attaboy, because of what they did to us, as if they get some satisfaction out of doing harmful and hurtful things to us. We think that they somehow get enjoyment out of causing us hurt and pain, as if they're thinking in their heart the good and the right thing to do is to be against us and cause us pain. Guys, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm telling you, this is where we run off to in our hearts sometimes and in our minds when our feelings get hurt. The people, listen, this is just the truth now. The people who have said and done hurtful things towards you, they don't rejoice in the hurt that they've caused you. I don't care what the world says to you. They don't understand the truth. The wisdom of the world is not the wisdom of God. The people who have hurt you and the people that have caused you pain, man, they don't feel happy in their hearts because of what they've done to you. You know what they feel like? They feel like what Paul felt like in Romans 7 when he said, "Oh, wretched man that I am. The good that I want to do, I did not do. And the bad that I didn't want to do, that's the very thing that I found that I have done to the people that I love." The people who have said and done things that have hurt you and caused you pain, they didn't want to hurt you. They actually only ever wanted to be good to you. They only ever wanted to give you a good life, to come alongside you and to help you live out the passions in your heart. They only ever wanted to love you with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their strength. But they didn't find the ability to do what they felt in their heart. Their consciences, man, their conscience actually condemns them because of the hurt they've caused you. They feel ashamed of themselves in their hearts for the pain they've caused you. The reason, and so people will say, well, why do they do it then? What's going on there? What makes them do it then? The reason people say and do hurtful things towards us is because they have come under the power of a belief that is not according to the truth. They have come under the power of a hurt, of a pain that's happened in their own lives. They've come under the power of a lie that come against their own life that did not come from God. And it's taken them captive, and it's caused them to do things that are contrary to what is actually in their hearts to do. It's actually taken them captive and caused them to do hurtful things towards you when actually deep down in their heart, if we could remove all the pain and their suffering, if we could really see what was in the bottom of their heart to do to you, all that was ever actually in their heart was to be good to you. Paul said in Romans 6 that to whatsoever you submit yourselves to obey, his servants you will be, whether of sin unto death or of faith unto righteousness. Now what Paul is saying that to whatever belief you submit yourselves to, whatever judgment you submit yourselves to, whatever conclusion you submit yourself to, you will become captive to that belief. Your mouth and your actions will be enslaved to that belief. And then that belief will take your life captive and bring forth its fruit in you. The people who said and did harmful things to you were taken captive by a belief. They were taken captive by a lie. They were taken captive by wrong judgments they've made in their own lives, by wrong conclusions they came to their own lives. And it brought forth an involuntary reaction in them. It brought forth an action in them that they didn't want to commit after the fact, man. They can look at what that came out of them and they thought, "Oh, wretched man that I am." It's like they can even be like, and I hope you can understand my examples here, but it can even be like with an animal in bondage to animal impulses and instincts. We don't count it against a dog. We don't hold it against a dog for sniffing the butts of other dogs. We're not like, "Oh, what's that dog doing? Why is that dog doing that?" We don't get angry with the dog because we see the dogs sniffing the butts of other dogs. You know why? Because we say they can't help themselves but to do it. They are enslaved to the impulses and instincts of dog. We know that they are under an impulse that has taken them captive and makes them sniff the other dog's butts. You know, in the Old Testament, there was something called presumptuous sins and sins of ignorance. I believe in the book of Numbers, chapter 15. Now listen, sins of ignorance can speak of a person committing a sin without knowing it was a sin, but what it primarily speaks of is a sin that was committed against the will of a person. It speaks of a sin that a person committed when their desire and intent was not to commit that sin. It speaks of a person having committed a sin unwillfully, meaning it wasn't their heart to do this thing that they did. It speaks of a person being overtaken by the lust of the flesh. It speaks of a person who commits a sin whose intent was not to commit a sin, but they found themselves overtaken by the lust of the flesh. You know, it's called the lust of the flesh, not the lust of a person, for a reason. Because the thing that comes out of that person is born from the lust of the flesh that's taken them captive. It's not born from the deepest desires of their heart. You know, it's like, and maybe this is an older movie. Maybe I'm realizing how much older I'm getting. Although I'm not really that old. But man, if you guys don't know this movie, check it out. But there was this movie called Idle Hand. And so what I'm talking about is kind of like the movie Idle Hand. And in this movie, the guy's hand becomes possessed. And he can't control his hand. And his hand goes around doing all these horrible things. And his hand goes around doing all these horrible things apart from his will. He's actually at odds with his hand. He even tries to stop his hand from doing what it does. I mean, the things his hand does is against his will. And after he sees his hand doing these things, man, he feels horrible. And he thinks, how can I stop my hand from doing these things? You know, and this dynamic isn't just something found in that movie. You can see this dynamic with Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 4. And Nebuchadnezzar is, you know, one of the most famous kings of Babylon in the Old Testament. And you can go look this up for yourself in Daniel 4. But Nebuchadnezzar, he came under the power of a belief, and a belief took him captive. He trusted in his own ability. He came under the belief that he could be exalted and have life through the strength of the flesh. He came under the belief that he could be exalted and have life by his own works. And he became a beast because of that belief against his will. And when he became a beast, he was taken captive to animalistic instincts and impulses. He no longer had control of his faculties. He came under the power of animal impulses and instincts, and he's down on all fours, eating grass and sleeping in the woods just like an animal would. He lived outside with the animals instead of living like a man. Now listen, he didn't desire to live like an animal, but he was taken captive by that belief. And that belief took him captive and caused him to live like a beast even when he was a man. Now listen, this is a picture of what it's like when a person comes under the power of a wrong belief. It will take a person captive and cause them to do things they don't desire to do, and that is contrary to their hearts and their conscience. Now, we can be set free from our hurt feelings and a life shaped by hurt feelings when we can see that this is the truth about the people in our lives and the thoughts and in the intents of their hearts. When you can see that the actual desire in a person's heart is to be for you and loving and good to you, it paints a much different picture of that person and the situation where you feel hurt in your heart. And it leads to a life of freedom from hurt feelings. It leads to a life that's animated by grace instead of a life that's animated by self-justification. It leads to a life that's animated, or it leads to a life that overcomes the world. It leads to a life that overcomes the injustices in the world, that overcomes the hurt and the pain that's in the world. It leads to a life where we're not trying to prove ourselves to people. We're not trying to prove we have value or worth, or that we have glory, that we have honor. We're not trying to prove our greatness. But what happens is our lives become animated by the truth, and it becomes animated by the strength of God. And we find ourselves set free, man, to attack life, to live from the passion in our heart, where we can't be swayed by the things people have said and done to us, that we're not shaped by the things people have said and done to us, but we find ourselves overcoming the things people have said and done to us. And we find ourselves just living the life of our design. You know, we don't have to we don't have to let our lives be shaped by our hurt feelings. You know, and we can't do it ourselves, but we can hear the voice of God, and we can hear his voice setting us free. And we can find our lives born from freedom, you know, where Jesus, when people did hurtful things to him, the hurt feelings, the hurtful things they did to him didn't shape his life, but he overcame them. And you see, through belief and through faith, we can see the Son, and we can believe on the Son, and the life of Jesus can be born in our hearts. And it can cause us to overcome hurt feelings, and we can live free. I just want to say a prayer for you guys before we go, and I just thank you for your time. Thank you, Sade, for the privilege again of speaking to your audience and just getting to hang out with you. We love you. You're just a great encouragement to us and the church here. Father, I thank you that we're not condemned to a life in bondage to the hurts and injustices we've experienced in the world. I thank you, Father, that you are a God of freedom and love and joy. I thank you, Father, that the hearts of everyone who hears this message can be shaped by the freedom you've come to give us in Christ. I thank you, Father, that everyone that hears this message can be set free from the hurt they've experienced in their life, that they can be set free from a life of self-justification, so that they can see life the way you see it, so their lives and their relationships with people can be shaped by the passion in their hearts and their union with you instead of the injustices in the world. Thank you, Father, for your love for people, and that you've taken it upon yourself to bring this forth in people. I thank you, Father, for your faithfulness to people. Father, and on behalf of all the people that would listen to this message, I just pray back to you. I just pray to you on all of their behalf that we commit the work of being set free from our hurt feelings into your hands. That we begin talking to you about the hurt that we feel. And instead of making conclusions about our hurt feelings, we talk to you about how we feel, and we let you tell us what's going on there. Thank you, Father, for your love for us. Amen.